Coffee is the last thing people want to question. But as unbelievable as it sounds, some of the most trusted coffee brands in the UK are cutting corners in ways that could affect your health. Behind the clean packaging are shortcuts most consumers never see. Some brands lean on vague labels to hide low-grade blends. Others rely on massive storage windows where freshness dies and risks quietly creep in. And when complaints pile up, the response is often silence or a refund. Once you look closely at reviews and recurring complaints, the truth becomes hard to ignore. In this video, I'm counting down 8 UK coffee brands you should avoid, then revealing 3 I actually recommend, plus how to spot bad coffee before you waste another sip. Because once you see how these brands cut corners, you'll realise the risk you've been taking every single morning. 8. Taylor's of Harrogate. Taylor's of Harrogate is a brand many people instinctively trust. It presents itself as refined, ethical, and distinctly British, which makes it feel like a safe step up from cheaper supermarket coffees. The packaging suggests care, expertise, and responsibility, leading customers to believe they are choosing something cleaner and better quality. For many households, this is the coffee they buy when they want to do better without going fully niche or specialty. But once you start paying attention to real customer experiences, a different picture begins to emerge. A consistent theme across reviews is uneven freshness. Some bags taste fine, while others taste flat, harsh, or stale far earlier than expected. That kind of inconsistency often points to long storage periods where beans sit for months before they ever reach a shelf. Coffee is an agricultural product, and when it isn't fresh, quality drops quickly. There are also repeated complaints about bitterness, sharp acidity, and stomach discomfort after drinking it. These issues can happen when lower-grade beans are roasted aggressively to mask defects. Heavy roasting doesn't fix poor beans, it just hides the problems long enough to sell the product. Over time, that approach prioritizes volume and appearance over what actually ends up in the cup. Transparency is another concern. While the brand talks broadly about ethics and responsibility, clear and consistent details about sourcing and bean quality are often missing or simplified. For a large-scale operation, vague language makes it difficult for consumers to know what they're really buying. When customers do raise concerns, the most common outcome isn't explanation or accountability, but replacement or refund. None of this means every bag is dangerous or immediately harmful. The issue is that coffee is something people consume every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Small compromises in quality, freshness, and processing don't feel dramatic in the moment, but over time, they add up. When a brand leans more on reputation than transparency, the risk quietly shifts onto the consumer. And if a trusted British brand like this can cut corners, the next one on this list is going to be much harder to justify. 7. Kenco. Kenco is one of the most familiar coffee brands in the UK. It's been around for decades, it's affordable, and it's often one of the first coffees people are introduced to. For many households, it's the default option, the brand you buy out of habit, convenience, or nostalgia. Because it's so common, most people rarely stop to question its quality. The problem is that Kenco is built around mass production, not freshness. The coffee is produced in huge volumes, blended for consistency rather than quality, and designed to sit on shelves for long periods without drawing attention to itself. That long shelf life comes at a cost. Many customers describe the taste as thin, overly bitter, or strangely flat, which are classic signs of stale or low-grade beans. Another issue frequently mentioned in reviews is digestive discomfort. People report heartburn, jitters, and an unpleasant afterfeel that lingers long after the cup is finished. This can happen when beans are over-roasted to hide defects or when cheaper blends are used to maintain profit margins. Over time, the body reacts more strongly to coffee that lacks balance and freshness. Kenco also relies heavily on vague marketing language. Phrases like smooth and balanced sound reassuring, but they don't actually tell you anything about bean quality, sourcing, or how long the coffee has been sitting around. There is very little information available to help consumers understand what they're drinking beyond the brand name itself. When customers raise complaints, the pattern is familiar: a refund, a replacement, or a polite apology. Rarely is there meaningful engagement with the underlying concerns. That approach works when a brand is trusted by default, but it doesn't fix the deeper issue. Kenco is coffee designed to be tolerated, not truly enjoyed. And when something is consumed daily, that distinction matters more than most people realize. And if this feels disappointing, the next brand on the list is even more unsettling, because it's one many people assume is a step up. 6. Douwe Egberts. Douwe Egberts carries the weight of history, and that alone earns it a lot of trust. It's an old name, widely stocked, and often associated with reliability and experience. Many people assume that a brand that's been around this long must know what it's doing, and that longevity equals quality. It feels established, safe, and familiar. The reality is that longevity often comes with scale, and scale changes priorities. Douwe Egberts produces coffee in massive quantities, blending beans from multiple sources to maintain a consistent taste profile rather than a high-quality one. That consistency is achieved by using beans of varying grades and roasting them in a way that smooths out differences, not by selecting better raw ingredients. The end result is a coffee that tastes the same every time, but rarely tastes fresh. A common complaint among regular drinkers is a dull, lifeless flavour that lacks aroma and depth. That's usually a sign that beans were roasted long before they were consumed and stored for extended periods. Coffee loses complexity quickly once it's roasted, and when it sits too long, what's left is bitterness and acidity without balance. There are also frequent mentions of stomach irritation and headaches, especially among people who drink multiple cups a day. While everyone reacts differently to caffeine, these symptoms tend to show up more often with heavily processed, over-roasted blends. When defects are hidden rather than addressed, the body often notices before the tongue does. Transparency is minimal. There's little information about harvest dates, storage conditions, or how old the coffee is by the time it reaches consumers. What you're buying is a product designed for efficiency and shelf stability, not for freshness or clarity. And when concerns are raised, responses tend to focus on customer service rather than addressing why so many people are reporting the same issues. Douwe Egberts isn't offensive coffee, and that's exactly why it stays in so many homes. It's easy to overlook, easy to drink, and easy to trust. But when something is part of your daily routine, quiet compromises can matter more than obvious flaws. And coming up next is a brand nearly everyone in the UK has used, and one that raises even bigger questions once you look closer. 5. Nescafé. Nescafé is one of the most widely consumed coffee brands in the UK, and for many people it's practically synonymous with coffee itself. It's quick, familiar, and marketed as reliable. When something is this common, people rarely question it. If millions are drinking it every day, it must be fine. That's the assumption. What most consumers don't think about is how instant coffee is made and what has to happen to produce it at this scale. Instant coffee is one of the most heavily processed forms of coffee available. Beans are brewed in industrial conditions, concentrated, dehydrated, and then turned into granules or powder. Every step prioritizes speed, shelf life, and cost efficiency over quality. Reviews and long-term customer feedback often mention a harsh aftertaste, excessive bitterness, and a chemical or burnt note that lingers. These aren't random complaints. Instant coffee is commonly made using lower-grade beans that wouldn't hold up well in whole bean or ground form. Strong processing and aggressive roasting are used to standardize flavor and hide defects before the coffee is ever dried. Another issue that frequently comes up is how people feel after drinking it. Reports of jitteriness, stomach upset, headaches, and crashes are common, especially among those who drink multiple cups a day. While caffeine affects everyone differently, these reactions tend to be stronger with highly processed coffee that lacks balance and freshness. There's also very little transparency. Consumers are rarely told where the beans come from, how old they are, or how long the finished product has been sitting in warehouses and on shelves. What's sold is convenience, not clarity. The brand relies heavily on trust built through marketing and familiarity, not on giving people meaningful information about what they're consuming. Nescafé works because it's fast and predictable. But predictability doesn't mean quality, and convenience doesn't mean safety. When a product is engineered to last for years rather than weeks, something has to give, and it's usually the integrity of what ends up in your cup. And if you think a global giant cutting corners is worrying, the next brand is one people often see as a cafe quality upgrade, and that's where things get even more uncomfortable. 4. Costa Coffee. Costa Coffee is often seen as a step up from supermarket brands. It's a cafe experience, a familiar logo on high streets, train stations and motorway stops across the UK. People associate it with freshness, baristas, and the idea that someone is preparing their coffee properly, right in front of them. That perception creates trust. But when you look past the atmosphere and branding, the coffee itself raises questions. Costa operates on an enormous scale, serving millions of cups every day. To maintain that level of consistency, beans are roasted centrally, shipped in bulk, and stored for long periods before they ever reach a machine. By the time many cups are poured, the beans are often far removed from their optimal freshness window. A common complaint from regular customers is excessive bitterness and a burnt taste. This is largely due to very dark roasting, which is often used to ensure a strong, uniform flavour across all locations. Dark roasting also masks inconsistencies in bean quality, making lower-grade blends harder to detect. The trade-off is a harsher drink that many people only tolerate by adding milk, syrups, or sugar. There are also frequent reports of discomfort after drinking Costa Coffee, including stomach irritation and heart palpitations, especially for those who consume it daily. Over-roasted beans can be more acidic and harder on the digestive system, particularly when combined with high caffeine levels and large serving sizes. Despite being a cafe brand, there's limited transparency about bean origin, roast dates, or how long coffee has been sitting in storage before use. Customers are encouraged to focus on size, flavor add-ons, and speed of service rather than the quality of the coffee itself. When complaints arise, they're usually handled individually rather than prompting any visible change in practices. Costa isn't selling bad coffee by accident. It's selling coffee designed for volume, consistency, and habit. And when something becomes a daily ritual, people stop questioning it, even when their body reacts. The next brand on this list is even more familiar, even more convenient, and even harder to avoid, which makes its issues impossible to ignore. 3. Starbucks. Starbucks is everywhere, and that's part of what makes it feel unavoidable. For many people, it's not just coffee, it's routine, comfort, and familiarity. You walk in knowing exactly what you'll get, no matter which city you're in. That consistency creates trust, especially when the brand presents itself as premium and responsibly sourced. But the coffee itself tells a different story. Starbucks is known for roasting its beans very dark, far beyond what's needed for balance or flavour. This level of roasting flattens differences between beans and hides quality issues, which allows the company to use lower-grade blends while maintaining the same taste profile. What's left is a strong, smoky bitterness that many people mistake for strength. Customer complaints frequently mention stomach discomfort, acid, reflux, headaches, and a jittery crash after drinking Starbucks coffee. Dark roasting increases bitterness and acidity, and when combined with high caffeine levels, it can be hard on the body, especially when consumed regularly. Many people only find Starbucks drinkable once it's diluted with milk, sugar, or flavor syrups, which further masks the coffee itself. There's also very little emphasis on freshness. Roast dates are rarely visible to customers, and beans are shipped and stored at scale before reaching cafes. The focus is on speed, customization, and upselling, not on how old the coffee is or how it was handled along the way. Transparency takes a backseat to convenience. At this point in the list, if this video is already changing how you think about your daily coffee, take a second to support the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This kind of deep research takes time, and the next entries only get more important. Because coming up next is a brand many people see as a budget-friendly alternative, and that's where the risks become even harder to ignore. 2. Lidl Bellerom. Lidl's Bellerom coffee is popular for one simple reason: price. It's cheap, widely available, and positioned as a smart choice for people who want to save money without giving up their daily coffee habit. For many households, it becomes a regular purchase because it feels practical and harmless. Coffee is coffee, right? The issue is that price pressures almost always show up somewhere in the supply chain. To keep costs this low, brands like Bellerom rely on large-scale sourcing, bulk storage, and blends made from beans of mixed quality. Customer reviews often mention an unpleasant, musty smell, an unusually bitter taste, or a flat flavor that lacks any real depth. These are warning signs, not quirks. One of the biggest concerns raised by consumers is inconsistency. One bag might seem acceptable while the next tastes noticeably worse. That kind of variation can happen when beans are stored for long periods or sourced from batches with uneven quality control. Coffee is highly sensitive to moisture and time, and when storage conditions aren't tightly managed, problems can develop quietly. Some customers also report feeling unwell after drinking it, describing nausea, headaches, or an unsettled stomach. While not everyone will react the same way, these symptoms are more commonly associated with poor quality beans, excessive bitterness, and coffee that's past its best, even if it hasn't technically expired. Transparency is minimal. There's little information about where the beans come from, how long they've been stored, or how freshness is managed before the product reaches the shelf. What's communicated is value, not quality. And when complaints are raised, they tend to be treated as isolated incidents rather than part of a wider pattern. Cheap coffee isn't automatically bad, but when a product is consumed daily, cutting corners becomes a bigger deal. Saving money at the checkout doesn't mean much if you're compromising what you put into your body every morning. And if this one surprised you, the number one brand on this list will be even harder to swallow because it's a weekly staple in millions of UK homes. 1. Aldi Alcafe. Aldi's Alcafe coffee is a weekly staple for millions of people across the UK. It's affordable, easy to grab during a regular shop, and often praised for being surprisingly good for the price. For many households, it becomes the default choice, the coffee you buy without thinking because it feels like a smart, practical decision. The problem is that this convenience hides a lot of unknowns. To keep prices this low at such a massive scale, Alcafe relies on bulk sourcing and long storage periods. Coffee beans are sensitive to time, air, and moisture, and when they're stored or transported in large quantities, quality can decline long before the product ever reaches a cup. Customer reviews frequently mention a dull taste, excessive bitterness, or a stale, dusty smell. All signs that the coffee may be past its best, even if it's still within date. There are also recurring complaints about how people feel after drinking it. Some describe headaches, stomach discomfort, or feeling unusually wired and unsettled. While caffeine affects everyone differently, these reactions are more common with coffee made from lower-grade beans that are roasted heavily to hide flaws. Dark, aggressive roasting can increase bitterness and acidity, making the coffee harsher on the body. Transparency is extremely limited. There's little clarity about where the beans are sourced from, how long they've been stored, or how freshness is maintained before they're sold. Shoppers are asked to trust the brand based on price and convenience alone. When issues are raised, they're often addressed with refunds or replacements rather than clear explanations. The biggest issue with Alcafe isn't that every bag is terrible. It's that coffee is something many people drink every single day. When quality is inconsistent and information is lacking, that daily habit turns into a gamble. Over time, small compromises become routine, and routine is where problems hide. This is why Alcafe sits at the top of this list. It's not because it's shocking or dramatic, but because it's ordinary, frequent, and trusted. And those are the products that matter most when it comes to your health. Recommended brand 1, Union Hand Roasted Coffee. Union hand-roasted coffee stands out because it operates very differently from the mass-market brands already discussed. Instead of prioritizing volume and shelf life, this brand focuses on traceability, freshness, and clarity. That difference shows up not just in marketing, but in how the coffee actually tastes and how people respond to it over time. One of the biggest reasons Union earns trust is transparency. They are open about where their beans come from, how they're sourced, and how they're roasted. This matters because coffee quality is determined long before it reaches your cup. Knowing the origin, harvest practices, and handling reduces uncertainty and limits the shortcuts that cause problems in cheaper blends. Customers consistently describe Union's coffee as smoother, cleaner, and easier on the stomach. That's not accidental. The beans are roasted with balance in mind, not burned into uniform bitterness. When defects aren't being hidden by aggressive roasting, the body tends to tolerate the coffee better, even with regular consumption. Freshness is another major factor. Union operates on smaller roasting batches and tighter supply chains, which reduces the amount of time coffee spends sitting in warehouses. Coffee that's consumed closer to its roast date retains more flavor and is less likely to develop the flat, harsh characteristics people often associate with supermarket brands. Importantly, complaints follow a different pattern here. Rather than widespread issues about tasting consistency or discomfort, feedback tends to focus on personal preference rather than quality failures. That's a key distinction. No coffee will suit everyone, but reliable quality dramatically reduces the risks discussed earlier in this video. Union isn't the cheapest option, and that's part of the point. You're paying for fewer shortcuts, better handling, and more information about what you're actually drinking. When coffee is a daily habit, those details matter far more than most people realize. And the next recommended brand goes even further when it comes to freshness, because it's built entirely around speed from roast to cup. Recommended brand 2, Pact Coffee. Pact Coffee is built around one core idea. Coffee should be consumed fresh, not months after it's been roasted. Unlike supermarket brands that prioritize long shelf life, Pact focuses on getting coffee from the roaster to the customer as quickly as possible. That single difference addresses many of the problems seen earlier in this video. Pact is transparent about sourcing, roast dates, and handling. Customers know when the coffee was roasted, where it came from, and how it should be stored. That level of openness removes a lot of guesswork and makes it harder for quality issues to hide behind branding or vague descriptions. When companies share details, they're also more accountable. Reviews frequently mention that Pact Coffee tastes cleaner and more balanced, without the harsh bitterness that pushes people to add sugar or milk just to make a cup drinkable. This is usually a sign of higher grade beans roasted with care rather than aggression. When coffee isn't over-roasted, its natural flavors come through and the drink tends to be easier on the digestive system. Another recurring theme in feedback is how people feel after drinking it. Many customers say they experience fewer jitters, less acid reflux, and a smoother energy lift compared to supermarket or cafe chains. While everyone reacts differently to caffeine, fresher and better handled coffee generally causes fewer negative reactions. Because Pact operates through subscriptions and direct delivery, storage time is drastically reduced. Coffee isn't sitting in distribution centers or on shelves waiting to be bought. That short timeline limits exposure to moisture, oxygen, and heat, the main factors that degrade coffee quality. Pact isn't perfect, and it won't suit every taste, but it avoids many of the systemic issues that affect mass-market brands. When freshness is treated as essential rather than optional, the end result is a safer and more reliable daily habit. The final recommended brand takes a slightly different approach, focusing on small batches and meticulous sourcing, and it's where quality control becomes very hard to fake. Recommended brand 3, Hasbean. Hasbean takes a slower, more deliberate approach to coffee, and that's exactly why it earns a place on this list. Instead of trying to appeal to everyone, it focuses on people who care about what they're drinking and are willing to pay attention to quality. This mindset alone sets it apart from mass-market brands that rely on habit and convenience. One of Hasbean's biggest strengths is how selective it is. The company works with small batches and specific lots rather than massive blended volumes. That means each coffee is chosen for its characteristics, not just its ability to be produced cheaply at scale. When coffee is treated as an agricultural product rather than a commodity, quality control becomes much tighter. Customers often describe Hasbean's coffee as clean, nuanced, and noticeably fresher. There's less bitterness, fewer harsh edges, and a clarity of flavor that doesn't need sugar or heavy milk to be tolerable. That's usually a sign of well-handled beans and careful roasting. Instead of burning coffee to achieve consistency, Hasbean roasts to highlight balance and origin. Another important difference is how the body reacts to it. Many people report fewer digestive issues and a calmer energy curve compared to supermarket or high street cafe coffee. While caffeine will always have an effect, coffee that isn't masking defects with over-roasting tends to be easier to tolerate when consumed regularly. Transparency is central to Hasbean's approach. Information about origin, processing, and roast style is readily available, allowing consumers to make informed choices. That openness makes it harder for problems to hide and easier for quality to remain consistent. When complaints do arise, they tend to be about personal taste rather than quality failures or discomfort. Hasbean isn't trying to be the cheapest or the most convenient option. It's designed for people who want to know what they're drinking and why it tastes the way it does. As a daily habit, that level of care reduces many of the risks associated with mass-produced coffee. Now that you've seen which brands raise concerns and which ones do things differently, the final step is learning how to spot bad coffee yourself, so you don't have to rely on lists like this in the future. How to spot bad coffee brands. Now that you've seen the patterns, the most important skill is being able to spot bad coffee before it becomes a daily habit. The first warning sign is a lack of transparency. If a brand doesn't clearly state where its beans come from, when they were roasted, or how they're handled, that information is usually missing for a reason. Vague terms like smooth, rich, or expertly blended are marketing tools, not quality indicators. Another red flag is an unusually long shelf life. Coffee is at its best within weeks of roasting, not months or years. Brands that design products to sit on shelves indefinitely are prioritizing durability over freshness. If a bag doesn't mention a roast date or only shows a distant expiry date, that's a sign the coffee may already be stale by the time you drink it. Pay attention to how the coffee smells and tastes. A musty, dusty, or overly bitter smell often points to old or poorly stored beans. If the flavor is harsh enough that you need sugar, syrups, or lots of milk just to make it drinkable, that's usually masking a quality issue. Good coffee should be balanced on its own. Your body's reaction matters too. Frequent headaches, acid reflux, jitters, or stomach discomfort after drinking coffee are not things you should ignore. While caffeine affects everyone differently, these symptoms show up more often with low quality, heavily processed, or over-roasted coffee. Your body is often the first place problems show up. Finally, look at how brands respond to complaints. If the most common solution is a refund without explanation, that suggests the issue isn't isolated. Companies that care about quality usually explain what went wrong and how they're fixing it, not just make the problem disappear. If this video helped you rethink your daily coffee, support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who drinks coffee every day. The more people understand what they're consuming, the harder it becomes for brands to cut corners in silence.